In Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11, there is the story of Jesus calling Peter. Now, in this story, there are four key concepts that I want us to think about. I want us to think about them because I know Jesus is calling me to follow him, and Jesus is calling you to follow him. And these four words are as essential to us as they were to Peter when he received his calling. You can read this passage of scripture on your own, but here are the four words. The first word is preparation. I don't know if you knew in those days what fishing nets were made of, but fishing nets were made of linen. And all of the time that you would read in the scripture where it talked about the fishermen were mending their nets, they were repairing their nets. Well, one of the things that fishermen had to do in Jesus' day is because the nets were made of linen, they had to untie them, lay the linen out, let the linen dry so that it wouldn't rot, and then before they went out to fish again, they would have to retie the linen into the net. And this took hours and hours of preparation every day after they got done fishing and before they went out to fish again. Now, I had heard on many occasions that Jesus had a special affinity towards fishermen. And the reason is because of all the preparation that they had to go through to fish. It took a lot of patience. It took a lot of detail. It took a lot of insight to go through all that preparation to prepare to fish. Well, you know and I know that Jesus called Peter to be a fisher of men. And he was preparing him. He was calling him to a 3-year journey to prepare Peter for what he wanted Peter to do for the rest of his life. So preparation. Preparation is one word, one concept we need to embrace about following Jesus. There's so much preparation for us to do in following Jesus, to know him, time in prayer, time in Bible study, but taking time for preparation. Another word is availability. During this calling, Jesus climbed into Peter's boat. And then he looked at Peter and said, "Peter, push out from shore." And Peter did it. He was available. Peter made his boat available and he made his time available to Jesus. And then Jesus taught the crowd from Peter's boat. But availability, making ourselves available to Jesus, is essential to be a follower of Jesus. And then the third word is obedience. After Jesus finished teaching the crowd, he says to Peter, "Let's go out to the deep water and drop the nets." Now, you may remember Peter's response. Peter's response was, "Jesus, I've chest fished all night long, and we haven't caught anything." Well, you know, Peter always fished at night. In fact, the fishermen in that day, they always fished at night. And the reason was because their nets are made of linen, the linen is white, and it would be visible to the fish. And instead of the fish swimming into the nets, they would swim away from them because it would look like a foreign object. So they would fish at nighttime when the white of the linen was not as visible to the fish. So here Peter is. Man, Peter has fished all night long, right? And then he made himself available in the boat. And then Jesus says, "Let's go out and let's drop this net in again." And Peter didn't want to. He tried to talk Jesus out of it. But nevertheless, when Jesus insisted, then Peter dropped the net into the water. And because of that, because of his preparation, because of his availability, because of his obedience, he caught a huge amount of fish. Now, when Peter got help and they got all those fish to shore, ultimately Peter fell at Jesus' feet. And when he fell at Jesus' feet, he says to him, "Oh, what a wicked man I am. What a sinner I am." And Jesus' response to Peter reminds us of our fourth and final word. And that fourth and final word concept is fearless. Because Jesus looked at Peter and the first thing he said to him is, "Do not be afraid." Now, there's many reasons that Peter probably had to be afraid. Like one of the things that could cause him fear is that here Jesus was, right, in his boat. He just, not only did he just teach in a powerful way, but then they just caught all of these fish at his command. And Peter had to think, who is this that's in this boat with me? But more than that, right, understanding his power, then Peter compared his own state to Jesus's. And he was like, oh no, I'm a sinner. I'm not worthy to even be with you. I'm not worthy to be in your presence. And then Peter also had to think about, what does all of this mean? That Jesus has chosen me. There's so many things that could fill Peter's heart with fear, but Jesus calls us to be fearless. So our 4 words in being an active and diligent follower of Jesus is preparation, availability, obedience, and fearlessness. Let's live our lives in those 4 concepts as we enthusiastically follow Jesus.